And you'll see a picture of a bundle with knots in it. And if you look down the side, it will tell you, no knots, no mordant, 1 knot, alum, and then we'll use 3 knots with iron. So you're going to take 1 piece with no mordant, another piece with 1 knot, and if we run out of this, I'll cut some more yarn and we're all going to be tying knots. You got as much as 2 episodes of Orange is the New Black allowed me to tie knots. So there's 2 types of yarn, and don't ask me why this yarn, when I hit it with iron, it turned this brown, but I bet it'll be fine. This is all 100% wool. The heavy yarn is Kona Superwash, one of my favorites to dye. This thin yarn is Malbrigio, which is, these are all 100% wool merinos that and then we have to take roll off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to assign a color to each of our species. And you're just going to grab a piece of this plastic tape. This is called flagging. You can buy it at hardware stores or logging supply stores. Or if you're like me and work for the Forest Service, you fish it out of the trash and there's little tiny rolls that get thrown away. And you just take it and you make a looping, and then we would know, oh, pink, let's see. So pink will be for a kind of donkey, right? Pink on your page. And then cross from us and substitute, we got Gymnopolis genomius at the bottom, so we're leaving that. Cross Dermosity off, cross Gompus off, Hypomyces, we'll use orange, and I'll write this on the board. Yeah, take another one, yeah. Boletes, we'll use yellow. Pisololithus, let's use green and white. Pisololithus, let's use none. And then instead of Usnea intermedia, we have Bovaria pulmonaria is our lichen of the day. Pulmonaria. Okay. So there we go. And that, let's see, our lichen. Let's use white with blue dots. What color was Pisololithus? Pisololithus is no color. No label, Pisololithus. This will become obvious when we have everything hanging up. You'll know what it is. And then each person will need to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bundles. The Gymnopolis we're going to do, yes.
Maybe I missed the color side assigned to the lobster mushroom. What?
Orange. I'm just going to repeat it. So a Chynodontium is going to be pink. Hypomyces, number 3 will be orange. Number 4, the Boletes edulis, the king bolete will be yellow. The Phaeolus will be green and white. Pisololithus is none. And the lichen will be white and blue. And I didn't assign one to Gymnopolis. Who do we have left? White. White, plain white for Gymnopolis. So then I'd say everybody just come and you need to make, once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bundles each. And they all have 3. So you take 1 with no, just one moment please. 1 with no, it's going to be, so you'll have 1 with no, here's no mordant. You'll have for each bundle, and then 1 with 1 knot, and then 1 with 3 knots, and there's 2 different yarns over here with 3 knots. There's the Malbrigio and the Kona. So jump to it.
Bundle for each one.
A bundle of 3 for each one, 7 bundles. 7 bundles. Did I get your question?
Are all of these mushrooms? I know lichens.
The only one we have that's a lichen is the Loberia culinaria.
I know that.
And everything else is a mushroom.
And are they ordinal? Are they found in ordinal?
They also, most of them are also found in California. And we can, the only one I know that, like the lobster mushroom, seems to be not to get this far south. It's found further north and further in the mountains. And Indian paint fungus is only found above 4,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
It's a high elevation. I like to take dried mushrooms and crumble them, soak them overnight, and then cook them. And all of these were done that way. Fresh mushrooms. So we got this wonderful big lapping gin. Do people know why it's called big lapping gin? It's because it's a very mild hallucinogen. But they taste horrible. Sorry, it's not worth it. So all I do with fresh stuff is chop it up, crumble it up, you know, it's not fancy, it's not cooking per se. So I like to just break them up. And it's a good idea to have smaller pieces. Some species, like the Cortinarius, you can get different colors from the cap versus the stem. Do a little research and find that true. These guys, it's not true. I love how they're kind of stringed like chicken. And you just string them all up, and then we're going to go pour hot water over it. My labels, as you see, are rubber bands and pieces of old mini blinds. Fish them out of your neighbor's trash. They're useful for plant labels, this kind of stuff, everything. And I just put them on with a rubber band, and if you don't make the fire too big, they don't get melted. Here we're using Boletes edulis. You know, I have a whole bunch of them, nasty old ones that I dried that were full of worms and too gross to eat, but you know, I was really greedy and I picked a ton of them, and they make some nice bowls and stuff. And here, this is what I meant to do. So here you can start seeing we got some good color coming. And then, so I like white spoons, garage sales. Then we've got our lobster mushroom. And you can see right now it's kind of this orange color. So now we're going to do a little magic. Ammonia, thank you. So you'll see I'm not much of a measurer. A glove. But then we're going to get the pH paper out and we're going to check. And with that glove, it started turning reddish. And we made glove a little more in because it should be redder than that.
Does that red go brown if you get it too hot?
This is one that, it's not like dermosophy. It seems to be hardier, but it's kind of unpredictable with batch to batch. Like I tried putting in a whole bunch of ones that were pretty red when they were drying, and sometimes I get magnificent reds and I'm a little red, this looks a little brown to me, but we'll see. But I turned it down. But this you can solar dye with and all kinds of things. And this is one, the color gets better the longer you cook it, whereas dermosophy, the longer you cook it, the more chance you have of getting brown. So, and then our last one, okay, I'm going to leave that one turned off. This is which is the Indian paint fungus extract. This is alcohol. Alrighty. So here's Pisololithus in all its real. Oh, this is great. This was really bad. That's good. Pisololithus is big dead man's foot. You find giant, at least where I live, man, I find ones the size of my thighs on the side of the road. And you bring them home and you put them in the freezer.
You can dry them, but they're much better in the freezer. Then when you're gonna go use them, you'll have all kinds of really gross, there'll be all these spores. Do not breathe them. Do it outside, wear a dust mask, and you want to put a little tiny bit of soap to knock the spores down. And boil, boil, boil. This is one of them you can boil the hoot out of, and you get good color. And then this is our Phaeolus, which is going to be a really lovely gold. The dye bath will be really dark, and you kind of have white, I like white spoons. And then when you're done with your spoons, give them a rinse. And then spoons, stay with dye baths. Don't mix, if you're going to mix spoons between dye baths, rinse in between. We don't want to contaminate one with another and end up with this kind of all-purpose milky brown. So it's called lungwort. Lung lichen, lungwort. Wort just means light, dry,
and
wet, doesn't matter. This stuff. I cook things until they're a color I like, truthfully. And some things I know from experience how much color I can get from something. So like that Indian paint fungus, a couple minutes and we'll have all the color we can get out of it.
Oh.
And other things like the Phaeolus, and that takes a long time. And the Pisololithus, the longer you leave it in there, the more color. In fact, Pisololithus, when I do things and often when I do things at home, I put my yarn in. Here's my technique. I hate watching pots. You are talking to somebody who really hates watching pots. I take the dye bath, I bring it up to 180 degrees, I drop it in a styrofoam cooler, the kind they use to ship frozen meat in. I throw my yarn in there, I give it a stir, I put the lid on top, I put the lid on the cooler, and I walk away. And I leave it overnight. And those coolers will hold temperature for I have one that will hold temperature for 3 days. So then the next morning I walk out in my pajamas before I go to work. If I like it, I run it back in the house and rinse it. That's my technique. Alrighty, yes?
My question is, what proportion of mushrooms to water are you using?
Okay, so the tradition, the place to start is 1:1. So we're talking dry weight of mushroom to dry weight of wool, which is easy if you're using dried mushrooms. If you're using wet ones, you wing it.
That's fine. I'm a winger.
And you know, and some of it is you get kind of a concept. It's one thing I did for a long time was I would weigh wet mushrooms when I was drying them, and then weigh how much they weighed when they come out. And typically mushrooms lose about 90% water. So, you know, exactly if you want, so it's basically, you know, so if you're using fresh mushrooms to dry wool, it's probably more like about 10:1, 5:1, and you wing it. And keep your fingers crossed and wonderful things happen. So let's go do our Phaeolus and our Pisololithus. That's pretty close. We're just going to let it sit in here with no heat for a bit and see, and just let it be. This is a color that you can solar dye with really easily and let it sit for a couple of days and it doesn't seem to damage things. And then of course, we move from one to another, rinse, rinse. And then that's lush. That's pretty close to what we're going to get. And once again, for now, I'm just going to turn the heat off and we're going to leave it. I'm a big one for turning the heat off and leaving it. That's the lobster. Here's our Boletes. Oh, beautiful. Now,
I love the Boletes.
I'm really, quite frankly, tempted to pull, well, we'll leave this in a few more minutes. I'm just going to turn the heat off. We're going to go do our stuff, and then we're going to probably pull this one. One thing with the yellows is when you get a yellow you like, take it out, because they'll go gold and brown if you leave them in. But we're just going to turn the heat off. A couple more minutes won't hurt. But this is not one I would not do overnight, because you could end up with a very beautiful goldy brown, but if you want yellow, yellow is kind of a touchy color. You really gotta pull them out. So Pisololithus, no color, no tag, no tag, no tag, no tag. Such strong color that we probably don't even have to really cook it, but we're gonna watch it and let it sit for a while. See, it's already picking up.
So a cold yarn into the hot, does it shock the yarn?
Of course it does. We're being really abusive to our yarn. If I were doing this at home and we're doing this stuff like I dye, what I would do is I would have my yarn soaked overnight. It would be at room temperature. Then I would go to my big sink, and I would slowly bring the temperature up to the of the yarn up, be running hotter and hotter water until it was as hot as my water heater can make it, which is 1 1/4. Then I would either let my dye bath cool to within 20 degrees of that, or I'd take a little boiling water and try to bring it up to around 160, the yarn temperature of the water that the yarn is in. And then I would slide very calmly slide my yarn in and let it sit for a couple minutes before I poked at it with my big red spoon. And then you want to be very, 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 very careful once your yarn is in, not to boil it. You will ruin it. So I put out a bunch of thermometers, and you can walk around and check temperature of things. And I like to do not over 180, which is 180 is it steaming vigorously, and there are no or only little tiny bubbles. Once you see bubbles, it's approaching 200 or even 212 boiling point, so turn it down. And don't be afraid to let things sit with no heat. The heat in the pot is enough. It does not, the flame is only heating the water. It's not real, it's the heat of the liquid that's important. If you want to get a really good gold, this is really loaded. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
This is
Awesome.
Really, wow.
Beautiful.
Oh, you know, this is the Pisololithus. That's the Paeolus. This is Pisololithus. I was going, wait a minute, where's the slop? Yeah, somebody make a note. We got to change it on the sheet.
I've got a couple of samples of Pisololithus with everything from black to the wonderful curry color.
So this
silk
is,
and wool. So
boy, you know, this is super, super dark. Okay, and I bet because we have, truthfully, I bet what's going on is we really have too much in the dye bath. Because, and we could fish this out right now and rinse it, and we'll get probably yellows and golds. Let me try one.
Is that the dead man's foot, this one?
This is the butt rod.
that's the dyer's color.
Such a great name.
Butt rod. Butt rod. So in forestry, you know, we call it the dyer's polypore ha-ha. In real life,
it's
the
gorgeous.
foresters all call it butt rot, because it rots trees from the bottom up, the butt. So I just want to give this maybe, see, so you can see the different yarns,
Yeah.
take it up differently. Do you guys want to take this out now?
Yeah.
Or I could just dunk it in for a minute, but I'm fine with taking it out. So, and you take your stuff and you just kind of pull it tight and grab some rubber bands, and you can either, if you make a really solid area, you'll pounding, powdering, putting it in some isopropyl alcohol. And as you see, when you use this dye, you need to use a double boiler or you will start a fire. Yes?
Was that the one that you could use oil instead?
Yes,
Okay.
oil. And you know, there are these oils that get used in Asia in natural dyeing as a color carrier that then you wash out, and I have never done anything with those.
Okay.
And someone could play with those, because I went to a madder workshop recently with this Turkish woman, and she boiled madder in some beautiful yellow oil. We dyed with it and then washed the oil out, and the madder did not come out of it, and it was how they make that beautiful red of Turkish carpets. There's stuff, so if you learn some tricks, come and teach me. Now here's the thing, all the tooth fungus, the sarcodons, the hidden elements, the phelodons, the boletes, the stuff that makes beautiful blues, greens, grays, my favorites. I've got this batch of hidden element pepii that I keep using that's making this green with iron. Stunning. They need ammonia. And some things are best used. Young Pisololithus, you get, and Inonotus, you get beautiful color, beautiful clear chrome yellows, my favorite color obviously. And if you use them when they're young, as you get older, you get that kind of golden brown that we got today. These are our older ones. You get these colors. And typically things that are woody or have teeth, well, the sarcodons, the hidden elms, the phelodons, and the boletes, which you can see pictures of up there. You want the older and the nastier the better. In fact, I put them in jars and I let them rot. Don't do this in your house. I have a big outdoor covered space and I put them in gallon jars and I let them sit. And then when you boil them, the maggots rise to the surface and you skim them off. And then you have beautiful colors, and whether the colors are, and it works. And then another one that, I don't know if you guys have this around here, tapenella. It used to be called Paxillus atramentarius. It's been made into a new name. It makes purple or brown. And that's another one like the dermosity where you have to keep your temperature low. And then you get the beautiful purples. And then as I said here, you guys learn my tricks. I hate watching pots. And my neighbor gets steaks shipped from that Omaha meat company. And those coolers are the best. And I buy, they're a regular styrofoam cooler, but the walls are this thick. They're for shipping frozen meat in and having it leave Omaha frozen and arrive in Montana a week later still frozen. Because they put a piece of dry ice in there too. But those things, I will go shopping with a cooler under my arm to make sure to find a pot that fits in it. And it's like, and then also I'll bring things up to temperature and put the whole pot, put the yarn in the pot, put the whole pot in the cooler, pop the top on, write the time, take an index card, write the time I put it in and what's in there, and walk away until the next morning when I put on my PJs and look in the box.
Personally speaking, when I'm making yarn to knit things, I love a little variegation. So I will leave the bits of mushroom in there, and where the mushroom comes in contact with the yarn or the silk, you will end up with a stronger color. So I like to leave the mushrooms in. Because here's another example, a little variation where the mushroom was left in. Oh, and I should do some colors here really quick too. So this is, the yellow here is Phaeolus. All the browns in here are different strengths of diabats of the Pisololithus. And we have Pisololithus outside. Let's go there. Well, let me do this first. The orange is Dermosity. And then this is our Gymnopolis. We'll make this luscious yellow. The Indian Paint Fungus. This is different strengths of diabats, a full strength diabats with iron. So that makes different ones. I'm trying to think what else we've got here. The lobster mushroom can make this pink, it can make, or it can, without having the ammonia added, it will make this peach color. One critical thing with when you do lobster mushrooms is you must add the ammonia with the mushroom in place. If you add to get that beautiful kind of cherry red, if you put the ammonia into the dye bath, you will not get that cherry red. You will just get peach. Do not ask me why that works that way. I just know it does. So those are some of the, let's see what else we got. So here's the Pisololithus on silk. I happen to be in love with that. Indian paint fungus on silk. What else do I have here? This is Boletes on silk. And then the rest of these are other things we don't have today. And then, again, more different Pisololithus batches. Another you can tell I like Pisololithus batch. And then we've got 2 batches outside here.
So here are some silk scarves.
Divided up in herbarium sheets. It all goes out.
It came out beautifully.